When Alex Cooley died late last year, it marked the end of an era in Atlanta music. He's credited with helping birth and foster the area's live music scene. He did so by bringing in popular musical acts at a time when no one really considered Atlanta a place to perform. Cooley became a legend, part of a select few that have created a social and cultural shift. Don King gave a boost to boxing, Vince McMahon took wrestling worldwide, and Pat DeCesar would turn the steel town of Pittsburgh into a haven for rock performers. Each of these individuals, though working in different industries, share a common thread. They all are adept at the art of promotion, and by most standards, they are some of the best. A promoter will often play a variety of roles: fundraiser, investor, supervisor, negotiator, marketer, just to name a few. The money exchange can be huge. For instance, census estimates show that in 2014, concert and event promotion in the U.S. generated about $25 billion. Peter Conlon ranks as one of the top concert promoters in the country, in part because he learned from one of the best. Conlon knows music and he knows business. Successfully marrying the two has paid off well for him and for Atlanta, as you'll see in today's Executive Profiles.
How did music find you? How did you find music as a kid? What was the connecting point that brought you to the music industry?
The Columbia Record Club. My parents belonged to that, which became a real scandal years later because they would send you stuff you didn't want. But my parents would get records in the mail every week. I would play and listen to music, and I just loved music.
So off to UGA you go, and that's where you got your first taste of this idea of, hey, we could bring bands onto campus and promote them, and because it sounds like UGA didn't really have a very good system in place, or
yeah, well, they were bringing bands, they just weren't bringing the right ones. That was a time when rock music was really starting to break, more on the touring end.
Sure.
And instead of some of the acts they were bringing, I talked them into bringing in the Allman Brothers, Elton John. We had the Eagles play on the Quadrangle. I think I paid them $7,000. I mean. We started bringing in these growing contemporary acts, and they started selling out.
And was it fun for you personally as a fan of the music? It must have been great, or were you really caught up in the business end of things, and it was hard for you to enjoy the music at the same time?
I like to work on the planning and the promotion side of it because we promoted on campus and the creative side. I worked on the crew the day of the show. I would go help unload. I mean, I remember the day Billy Joel drove up in a U-Haul. He drove his own, and I helped him unload his U-Haul. It was fun being involved in all those aspects.
You've had this opportunity to join the Carter campaign back in 1970. Well, I guess at that point it would have been 1975.
75, yeah.
So a year out from President Carter being elected. Tell me what that experience was like for you.
When I first joined the campaign, probably 20 people working for the president then. My friends all laughed at me and thought I was crazy, but I always thought Carter would win. And as we gained momentum and kept winning, we grew. And by the time we had the general election a year later, we had 2,500 people on staff.
Wow. After President Carter was elected, you did spend some time in the White House, correct?
I went to Washington in November, right after the election, and worked as assistant treasurer at the inaugural committee. And then I went to work as a White House liaison at the SBA, and was there for 2 years, maybe more, and then I left. Hamilton asked me to go back to the campaign when we were running again, and I left to be national fundraiser director for the second campaign.
Now, you've mentioned that Hamilton Jordan was an influence on your career, on your life and your career. Tell me about what about Hamilton made him a mentor or an influence for you?
Well, he was a really decent guy. He was very loyal. He was a brilliant political strategist.
Right, and to identify to Hamilton Jordan, he was Jimmy Carter's
campaign manager. He actually wrote the initial strategy for President Carter to run, which a lot of people still use as a textbook kind of approach to a national campaign.
So let me shift away from politics onto your first love, music. Mm-hmm. You've been at this now for a while, and you've seen the music business evolve. In what ways has it gotten better? In terms of acts and performances, bringing them to town, promoting them. In what ways do you wish we could go back to the 1980s? Are there certain things you like and certain things you don't like about where we are today?
Any business evolves, and you're going to go through an evolution. There's always, I tell people, it may change technologically. I mean, how you buy your ticket's always going to change, or where you buy it, or where you go to see a show may change. The fact that won't change is people always go to shows. Production it's much more production intensive now. I mean, back in the 80s and 70s, it was 2 trucks, it was a lighting rig, it was minimal. Now it's a matter of just, I think, acts trying to outdo each other.
Yeah.
But, we're doing in arena shows, 19, 20 semis of equipment for a one-day show.
I want to talk for a second about Alex Cooley. I think your names were, for those of us who listen to the radio, would hear both names announced when we were talking about Concert Southern Promotions. You'd hear Alex Cooley and Peter Conlon in the same breath. So in many ways, people connected you. Tell me about Alex.
Well, he was an interesting person. We were very close. We were partners for about 17 years. Then after we sold the business, we were still together, so probably a total of 24 years.
Sure.
I was much more business oriented. I was initially the run the numbers, do budgets. I mean, Alex initially a lot of times didn't do budgets. He just thought it sounded like a great show, and let's put it on. I learned everything from Alex, from how you book a show to how you promote a show to how you settle a show. He helped invent the business.
At the venues that Live Nation works with in Atlanta, you guys are, again, the centerpiece for most of the major venues in town. Music Midtown has turned into a great success since in its renaissance.
We started in 1994.
Right.
At that time, I believe it was the largest festival in the United States. We were doing 100,000 people a day 3 years later for 3 days. I don't think we got the attention nationally we probably should have because we were on the cutting edge. There weren't a lot of festivals. It's a love-hate relationship with festivals. I mean, I really like them when they're over. They're a real challenge to book. They're a real challenge to produce. Weather's always a factor.
Oh, yeah.
Crowds are very fickle as to what they want to see and what year. The great risks financially. Music Midtown has an established brand and it's well known in Atlanta, and it's something we're committed to.
And tell me about your involvement with Chastain. Live Nation is working more closely with Chastain this year.
Alex and I, we've been in there for about 35 years, and
right.
We've been partners with the Symphony in operating Chastain, and we did our separate series, and then we've had some talks recently, and we have now taken operational control and booking control on the facility.
What advice do you give young people about who want to get involved in the music industry? Maybe more on the management side like you're on, or the promotion side.
Well, it's different now. It used to be people would like send a resume into a record label
Right.
or a radio station and get involved. I advise people to really kind of focus on what aspect of the industry appeals to them,
right.
And then pursue an entry into that way. I mean, our company's constantly looking for young, motivated, creative people.
Sure.
We're hiring young people all the time. It's actually, I think, easier to get in the business now than it was when I tried.
Peter Conlon's personal passion for music has not waned over the years. He still listens to radio and prefers his collection of vinyl records over the digital sound. He says he attends every show he books. Live Nation posted impressive financials last year. Revenue rose 11% to a hearty $7.6 billion. When we come back, Patrick Crosby delivers fiscal stats on a few Georgia financial institutions that hold some pretty hefty funds. He also does some monetary tracking to discover which city can covet the title Banking Capital of the Southeast. That's all when Atlanta Business Chronicles Biz returns.